Welcome to Life Hunter. I'm your host, Anthony Van Grinsven, and today we're doing something completely different. We're going to be outdoors, but today we're just talking. Welcome to Life Hunter. Deep inside every man lies a quiet, unshakable call, a need to reconnect with what's raw and real. Out here, instincts take over, guiding each step, every decision. Hunting is more than a pursuit, it's a mirror. It reflects our strength, our patience, and the emotions we rarely confront. The thrill of the chase, the pursuit of goals, both in life and the outdoors, the stillness of the wild, they all remind us of who we are. Life Hunter isn't just about the hunt. It's about finding ourselves in the process, one step closer to the reconnection of our passions that make us human, that give us drive. In the hunt for a trophy, we discover ourselves. Welcome to Life Hunter. Welcome to Life Hunter. In today's episode, today we're doing something completely different. We're just talking. We're here in Lakeville, Minnesota, a place that I know all too well because this is where I grew up. And today, our story takes place here at Orchard Lake. There's a moment in the outdoors or on a lake that every fisherman, every hunter, every outdoorsman eventually experiences. That's what I want to talk about today. It's not when the shot breaks. It's not when the line gets that nice hard hit. It's not with the ripple of the water in the lakes. It's all the moments before that. It's those times where the woods are still, the water is glass, the wind hasn't picked a direction to go into, and everything in that moment seems quiet, silent. But if you sit there long enough, you begin to realize something. The silence isn't silent. And that pressure seems to mount in your chest. And that's when the silence has something to say. And our story begins here, right on this lake. It was one of those beautiful summer mornings, not like today where it's just average temperature here for Minnesota. I remember backing in the trailer, easing it in. A beautiful summer day, humid, great. No other boats were in sight. Nobody was docking. Nobody was going in. And the water had no ripples in it. A beautiful, perfect fishing day. Once I got the boat into the water, I started the motor and went straight to a spot where I know the largemouth bass are perfect for that time of year where this story is taking place. You know what? Not too far off from right there. Perfect place. As I got out there, I shut the motor off, drifted into the lily pads, and just sat there. Perfect silence. So I got my line set up, cast it into the lily pads, and it was a perfect cast. One of those casts that echoed across the entire lake. That's how quiet it was. I had the day to myself. And that's when it hit me. The silence was everywhere. I could hear everything. I could hear the air. I could hear the water. I could hear my breath. I could hear myself. I sat there working a topwater lure for what seemed like forever. And in between twitches, I would just let it sit across the top of the water. Every ripple seeming like a ring that broke a glass mirror. Perfectly placed, perfectly rippled, perfectly silent. It was one of those days where the lake was perfectly quiet. No jet skis, no boats, no other fishermen. The only occasional noise was that of insects along the shoreline. You could hear everything. It felt like the lake had been handed to me, and only me. It was one of those rare days, like I said. But then I saw it. A slow push of water moving forward. Not a splash, not a strike, just a presence. And if you fish long enough, you start to notice those subtle signs and signals. Something out there watching your lure. So I twitched the bait once, twice, and then it happened. The water itself exploded. A largemouth bass took the bait and came screaming out of the water, splashing water everywhere. All of a sudden, the lake came alive. Now the drag hummed, the rod throbbed, the water splashed, and the fish tried to bury itself back into the lily pads. And through all of the chaos, for some reason it was still silent. No crowd, no people, just me in that moment. Eventually, after a brief struggle, I got the bass next to the boat. Right there, it surfaced. Beautiful largemouth bass, wide body, green color on the back. Awesome. I was able to take it out of the water carefully, unhook it, get it back to the water, and just before it swam off, I held it there just for a brief second and took that moment in. And I did that because I realized something. That as soon as I let that fish go, there were going to be no more ripples in the water. There was going to be no more splashing. There was going to be no more lines humming and chaoticness of actually trying to catch the fish. The silence was coming back, and it came back bigger. Catching fish is the main reason why a lot of people come out here, but it's not the whole reason why I do it. The real reason came when I was out in the boat that morning. It happened in the silence. Most people try to fill the emptiness with noise. We fill every moment we possibly can with noise. Music in the car, podcasts while we work, television while we're cooking, or phones while we sit and wait. But the reality is, silence just simply makes people uncomfortable because silence forces us to listen, not to the world, but to ourselves. A quiet lake like this in the middle of summer doesn't offer any distractions. It strips everything away that is left for the truth. And sometimes that's hard. And when that happens, the silence itself gets loud. It reminds you of the things that you've been avoiding. And it reminds you of the decisions that you've been putting off. The conversations you know you should have, the person you know that you should be becoming out there on the water, you can't drown that out. And maybe that's why we keep coming back. Because as hunters and fishermen, we don't chase animals or fish, we chase silence. And somewhere inside of us, that gives us clarity. Sitting with our own thoughts is probably one of the best things that we can do for ourselves. Because one thing I've realized is that most people don't realize that you can take lessons from the outdoors and the wild and lakes like this. Because most people, they don't sit long enough to hear them. Now, just like our More Than the Hunt podcast, I have some things that I like to talk about. And I usually like to give lessons that you can take away from our podcast. So I want to try and do that here. I have 3 takeaways that I want to share with you. So here they are. But before we get into this lesson, I want to just kind of tell you that I wrote these down because I feel they're important. So if I read from them, I apologize. I'm not that good at this yet, but I'm learning. The first lesson is silence reveals the truth. When the noise disappears, you begin to hear things that actually matter. And I believe that. Your instincts get sharper, your thoughts get deeper, and the truth about where you are in life, it becomes harder to ignore. When I first started and set out on this adventure for Life Hunter, I was sitting in the woods and I was trying to put some things in life together. I sat there for a long time wondering how it is that I can turn something that I love to do, like hunting, fishing, the outdoors, into something relevant. And that's when it hit me. My thoughts became deeper, my silence became louder, and where I wanted to be in life became a lot harder to ignore. That's why I started this. And that's a good first lesson to take away from the silence. Now that brings us to takeaway 2. The second lesson is awareness creates opportunity. It's another important one. And I'll read it to you again because, again, I wrote these down. The angler who consistently catches fish aren't always the ones with the most expensive gear. They're the ones that are paying attention. They notice the subtle push of water near the pads like I did, the slight change in the wind, the movement beneath the surface that most people miss. And life works the same way. When you slow down and truly observe opportunities, they appear in the noise that may have hidden them. Life becomes chaotic. Life becomes crazy. Kids, family, spouses, work. If you never sit in silence or learn what the silence can teach you, you could miss out on a large opportunity. The third lesson is simple. Clarity lives in stillness. And the outdoors force us to sit in stillness. Because the reality is, as we sit in stillness, we often find the answers that we've been looking for in all the wrong places. So the next time that you're sitting in silence, don't look at it as the problem. Look at it as your next opportunity. So, in closing, out of all of this, I want you to remember this next time. And that is to listen carefully next time. You might not always hear the wind. You might not always hear the rustling of the leaves. You might not always hear the wind blowing across your line in the water. But there's something out there. Something that you should listen to, because the silence, it speaks. Sometimes loud, sometimes soft, but it's there. And if you're good enough to listen to it, you might take something away from it. And if you're patient enough, you might learn something that generations of hunters, anglers, and outdoorsmen have already learned over the decades. And that is that the silence of the wild is and can be your biggest teacher. Thank you for watching another episode of Life Hunter. We greatly appreciate your time and your attention to our shows. We absolutely love that. Be sure to follow us everywhere at Life Hunter TV on all major social media platforms. And be sure to visit us at thelifehunter.com, where you can find more episodes like this and links to our podcast, More Than the Hunt podcast. As always, I'm your host, Anthony Van Grinsven. Welcome to Life Hunter.